This is a family lived-in place, and it's built on this top. You have a most amazing view. I think you can see all the way to the coastline in the far distance. You see Volterra, you see a lot of beautiful Tuscan hills. Absolutely gorgeous place.
Those producers who don't recognize that Terre di Pisa could be a real revolution for the future, they are not real wine producers yet, in my opinion. This is what I think. Because they've not concentrated on that soil, on that quality.
It doesn't hold much back to, famous names like Tignanello or wines like that. It's a wonderful wine, wonderful expression, definitely has a personality. So for me, it's like, why is this a wine people don't know about?
Yes, me too.
It's gorgeous stuff. The wine growing and maybe at least the focus on quality wines is fairly recent.
Very recent, yes. In the whole Tuscany, the estates were quite big, but were multicultural. So not only vines, but olive groves, farming land. But the noble families were owning these estates, and it was not their first job. Probably they didn't work at all. The wines was sold in bulks or they sold grapes. So they were not so interested in the vine growing. Completely different in Piedmont, where there were smaller properties because they were directly cultivating their small properties, and they arrived to understand the importance of quality much earlier than us. The peasants were cultivating a little piece of land, but the owner was the owner of the land, and he demanded 50% of the crop. So the urgency for the peasant was eating, not having the quality and bottle the wine and discover. They couldn't discover the international market at that time. So when this Mezzadria, so 50-50 system, was not legal anymore, the owner started to understand that he had to hire people and cultivate the land, also to have certain margin in order to be able to reinvest. So it was a revolution. It was in the late 60s.
We don't know exactly when, but we know that they've been there at least for around 800 years. And it was settled to have a lookout towards Florence. It doesn't seem, at least today, that it used to be a fortress, but it was definitely sort of a military outpost, and that's how you often became the noble, that you had to protect the land. And the family has been counts for centuries. First there was a tower, and then the house and the estate and the entire small village with everything that you needed to survive. Small church, and everything. So this is how some of these small villages actually started their lives in not only in Tuscany, but this is part of European history. It sort of looks like a museum, but the family lives here, so it's just layers of generation who's been here for centuries. So there's beautiful old furniture, but also modern things. It's a very, very special place to visit.
When my father died, it was 2008, and it was September. He died on the 5th of September after a long period of illness. And it was almost time of harvesting. And it came a hail, very bad, but wherever on the property. So you could see these rivers, red little rivers. Wow. Along the roads, and that is an image that it stayed with me for a long time.
I have to say that having the Veneroso 08, after you mentioned your father passed away before harvest, just before harvest, and you had a hailstorm, and still we have this really, really elegant, very, very charming wine in the glass, which is very floral. It's not super intense, but it's really seductive in its sort of red fruits and floral notes. So how did you make that wine after such circumstances?
I owed him a good number of bottles of Veneroso, which was his wine. So we had to cut what was bad, and to leave what few bunches. And in this case, nature always gives you back something. Because you're so stubborn to go on there and try to make something good. So, it was a good wine, but I think now is really great satisfaction to have it not only alive, but really good to drink with such a balance. I mean, which was not taken for granted.
Layers of dark fruit, lots of tobacco, cigars, all of that. You're being told to get into the back seat, and the car is an old Rolls-Royce, and you're sitting next to the guy who's being chauffeur-driven in this old Rolls-Royce. And there's leather, there's polished wood, and there's cigar notes for sure. And there's something which, well, it just smells really expensive, to be honest. You have that incredibly complex wine, which is, and it's very generous, but it's, again, into that really elegant. Nothing jumps out. Everything is so well behaved within the context of, sort of within its frames. They don't only make lovely wines, they also make flour, which is delivered to a local pasta shop that makes pastas. And they also produce different kinds of great olive oils. So you can have almost a full meal with wine, pasta, and olive oil from the estate.
To keep this place alive, he had to do another job. So me is the first of the family who's doing this job full time. because it's not time anymore to do this as a second job, as a hobby, or not in this dimension. The Italian style garden was a passion of my grandfather. So before being the Italian style garden that you see now, was an orchard. When my father was born, 1932, my grandfather dedicated this garden to him. The inspiration was a Renaissance Italian style garden. So he essentially copied more or less the project of the garden, and it looks much older because the plants, they found their place and they are really huge. And it's still a passion of my mother now, for example. You can see her walking in the garden and pulling out the grass and working physically in the garden at 86.
It's really fascinating these days to follow what's going on in Tuscany, because it's a sort of a quiet revolution which a lot of people are not paying attention to actually existing, but it's a lot of very interesting things going on.
What people don't usually do when the must is sweet, it's not easy to understand behind the sweetness if it is over extracted or not. So you have to take decision in this time. And then year after year, we understood that even though the harvests are different, we always, on all wines in the last 20 years, we have this elegance. The few vintages that we did wrong, and I know, and I don't let you taste. I'm so glad to taste it with you. I mean, 88, it was a really long time since I didn't open the bottle. And, was completely, could be completely ruined. 88, I mean.
Almost 40 years.
Almost 40 years.
The most important thing is that it's kept the oxidation or the oxygen out of the bottle, which it has, because that wine is wonderful. This is the thing when you're a wine critic and you taste something that you don't really know, and you taste them in young vintages. So I haven't tasted Veneroso. That's why we're here, because I do love your wines, but I've never tasted anything old. And I think I've tasted, I think the oldest I tasted was 2014, which we had last time, which was then around 10 years old. And the potential was really lovely. But it's still a guesswork for me that, how it's Sangiovese, it's Cabernet Sauvignon, the building blocks should do this and this, but it's nice to actually have the evidence of that the theory actually works. And to see that it's actually a little bit more going on in the wines than what you feel when they're young. There's a complexity here, which is showing also the Sangiovese very, very well, which I absolutely love. I think that's, you've done a brilliant job. You and your father has done a brilliant job on these wines.
The years I've spent here living the winery life has been the best part of my life. Because if you can combine going around the world to try to give your experience of being a winemaker, combined with being in the place, having a relaxed time, and see your country and what you physically can grow, and doing some physical job that I'm doing less and less, because I'm better to other things than that, but is that is the quality of life, in my opinion. It's true that you are quite far from everything, but nowadays there's so many means to go from one place to the other. Plane, cars, train, etc. So you're not out of the world, but when you're here, you're out of the world in a world which is a fairy tale, and is really that is the quality of life where you don't have to worry about parking, about finding the plumber or the electrician, because in this little village there are 2 electricians, 1 plumber, and they all go here and around to work, and then you can leave the key in the door or the key to them. If you're not there, they can come and fix what they have to fix. And then if you want to have a walk, you can also change every time your path and see something different. You can see the foxes and you can see the wild boars, but you can see also the deers and the, so many animals that in living in town, you're only annoyed by the idea of. Instead, having the opportunity to live this kind of life nowadays, I think it's a lucky thing.